Hey guys, it's Mr. Mini Painter here and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I painted Hera, the Bride of Death. She's this legendary hero miniature of the Middle-earth strategy battle game, the daughter of Helm Hammerhand from the movie The War of the Rohirrim, and she's this avenging warrior kind of girl with a unique dress, prepped and ready for battle. She's the avenging warrior who plays a critical role in the defense of the Hornburg following the loss of her family. So with this iconic character, I thought it was worth making a video of how I painted her, and I hope this video is of any help to you guys, and if it is, please leave a comment below because I love to hear from you and I'll respond to all of you guys. So without any further ado, let's get to painting. So here's the fearsome warrior herself. I primed her in a gray primer, just using some Mechanica Standard Gray, but you can use any primer that you want, and I glued her to the base. Now normally I would add some modeling sand, but I wasn't really sure how I was going to end, to be sure, because I wanted to add some snow, some rocks, so I'm just saving it until the end of the video. For the skin, I'm using a Bugman's Glow base coat. Now she has quite a pale skin in the movie, and I'm gonna stick as close to the box art as possible. Now she's wearing gloves, so it's just the face that we're painting. Now for the first highlight step, I'm using Cadian Flesh Tone in a pure form. We're going to be painting about 80% of the previous layer, since her skin is going to be very bright. I'm just leaving the eye sockets, the inner part of the eye, darker, so that those eyes really speak out more. So I'm focusing here on basically all of the rest of the head of her face. Of course, leave the inner part of the ear darker, and some parts, for example, below the lips. And below her neck, of course, as well. So kind of blend that with the previous color by thinning down your paint. I'm doing the same with some Kislev flesh for a final, not a final, but another highlight, and decreasing the area that I paint. So now I'm focusing more on the upper part of the chin, the cheekbones, the tip of the nose, the forehead, stuff like that. And I'm highlighting it now even further by adding some Palette Witch flesh to the mix and repeating my previous step. Now I thin down my paint with some water and kind of pull from the darker parts towards the brightest part. So that way, where you leave the tip of your brush is going to be the point where it's going to be the brightest. So that is an easy and quick way to blend those colors together. It's not really visible here. I tried to focus in as far as possible, but I wasn't really able to get it sharp. But you get the idea. Now with Palette Witch Flesh, I'm painting in the white of the eyes, leaving some of those darker, the darker area that we left in the base color as it is. So that way the eyes, they really pop out a bit more. Now try and add a tiny dot for the pupil with Abaddon Black. And then it's time for the hair. I'm using Doomble Brown as a base color. She's got this beautiful red hair that we're going to really work, and this Doomble Brown has a lot of red tones in it already, which makes it a perfect starting point. Now to highlight it, I'm mixing some Tuscarora Fur and Jacaro Orange. Now you can, for example, do Tuscarora Fur as a first highlight and then do this as a second highlight, but I think that Tuscarora Fur is way too close to the Doomble Brown to actually make a difference. So I also did it in 2 steps, but then increasing the Jacaro Orange along the way. You can see me holding my brush sideways like this, which makes it very easy to paint those individual strands of hair. Make sure to wipe off most of the paint of your brush, otherwise you're going to get big globs of paint in one area, and you do not want that. I'm picking some of those hairs here as well. Then she's wearing this crowny thing, which I'm painting with some XV88 as a base color. It's kind of a hairband of sorts. And we're going to be highlighting that in this next step with some Demise Desert. Focusing just on the front, the very tips, so leave some of that darkness still shining through. And again, not really sharp, but you get the idea. This is what we have. There is also some of that band around the bottom part of the hair. Then it's time for the dress. Demonette hide I'm using for the lower garments. I'm going to be using a lot of the same colors here to really make it easy to paint her, but still have more than enough subtle details and differences in color. Make sure to get the inside here as well. And because this dress is old and worn, there are some holes in there, mainly on the side and back of the dress. And then you want that darker part to be shining through those holes as well. So make sure to pick out those tiny holes here in the back, for example, and the chest. Now I'm washing everything with Druchii Violet, which really works with this Demonette hide and blends together very well. And also on the chest here. And then it's time to paint the upper half of the garments, and I'm using the same Demonette hide, but this time mixing it with some palette witch flesh to about 1/3 palette witch flesh and 2/3 Demonette hide, but which makes it a subtle enough difference between the first and the second layer of garments. Now there is a lot of folds here, cloth, so take your time and make sure to leave those darker areas we painted before as they are. And next, by adding some more palette witch flesh, so increase that amount, we're going to create our first highlight here. We're going to do that in a couple of steps. I think I did it twice or maybe even 3 times, so increase the palette witch flesh into the mix so you get a brighter variant of purple, and just pick out those edges and details here. Because it's a worn piece of cloth, you want to focus on the very ends of these garments, so the edge details are important here. And with some pure Demonette hide, I'm doing the same on the bottom part of the garment. It's the original color, but because of the Druchii Violet it's darkened down, so we're going to be picking up the original color from this point as a highlight of its own. Now, if you want to have it a bit more brighter, you can add tiny bits of palette witch flesh, for example. The metal I painted with some lead belcher, which is the sword and the rim of the shield, and the center of it here. Then the inside of the shield I'm painting with Doombull Brown. For a first layer I thinned it down quite a bit, and I later colored it in with the same Doombull Brown once more to get a more solid color. For the grip of the sword I'm using Gehenna's Gold. There's a ton of tiny details in there as well. And I'm using the same Gehenna's Gold on the shield also. The circle, the inner circle here, and those tiny wavy details. But make sure to not touch that brown. Now you can still see my brown is a bit shining through because I painted in later with the second layer of Doombull Brown. Now I'm washing all the metal parts with some Nuln Oil to get that beautiful shade in there. And I'm using some Reikland Flesh Shade on the gold parts, so the sword as well as the shield. And then it's time for some blue details on this band here, and for that I'm using Sotek Green. Now she's got wrist armor, some leg armor, and this band around her waist, which all have this Sotek Green, which is actually blue, color. So take your time and pick out those tiny details here. It's the bands around her arm. They go all around. The strap around her waist, but also this armor here. And also here with her legs. It's not much showing, but it's a nice color detail that really works with the rest of the model. Now I figured that this should be highlighted as well, even though it is already quite bright. But for that I'm using some Temple Guard Blue, or if you want you can add some Palette Witch Flesh to the previous layer, and just focus on those parts that are more towards the surface and would reflect the most light. So for example here on the arm, my light source is probably from the front and above, like a sun. So that part should reflect more than, for example, the lower parts. I'm going back to the Gehenna's Gold, and I'm painting a tiny rim on all of the armor and the strap around her waist. It's those tiny details that always make me really happy when they work, because it's those tiny details that really add to the realism of the model. So I always like to take my time for this and make that work, because that really defines your model, the amount of details, the level of details you add to it. Now the boots itself, I'm going to be painting with some Corvus Black, which is basically a very dark gray. At this point it's not really a matter if you touch the base or not. I'm painting the gloves here as well with the same color. And now all that's left is highlighting that. So I'm adding some Mechanica Standard Gray as a highlight to paint the edges, the top of the boots here, and the soles of the boots. Give that a nice edge highlight, but also apply the same color on the fingers of the gloved hands. I'm repeating this by adding some Mechanica Standard Gray as a second highlight. Just pick out those top fingers here. And then we have some final details left on the metal, and I'm using some Stormhost Silver to add some brightness to the metal, add some reflection there. So I'm focusing on the top half of the center, give the top of the shield and the rim and those triangles here some edge highlights. And of course add some sharpness to the blade. Now it's time to glue some rock to the base. I'm just slapping some glue on there, using a toothpick to spread that out. This is usually how I add my rocky part of the base. Now I glued some modeling sand on there as well and give it a gray color. And I'm now adding some snow to final detail this base. Valhalla Blizzard, which is a beautiful technical paint by Citadel that adds to the realistic snow effect to your miniature. Just slapping it on here and there. And here's the final result for Hera, the Bride of Death, daughter of Helm Hammerhand, beautifully posed as an avenging warrior in this beautiful purple dress, iconic from the movie The War of the Rohirrim. Now if you like this video, please leave a comment and consider subscribing to my channel, as I'll be making a lot more videos and I'll keep you posted. And also consider checking out my Patreon page, as I'll be making a lot more videos like this, and I would really appreciate your support. For now, thank you so much for watching again, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos. Bye bye!